Okay, so here's the deal. I've tried a number of times to leave a create a video that both speaks to the movie 5 Feet Apart and also incorporates some of my own experience. And um, it gets long and it gets complicated. And the thing is, it is long and it is complicated. So maybe I'll do two separate videos or maybe I'll do a couple of videos. But right now, I'm just gonna share and let it fly. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kori Tolbert. I am first and foremost a being an expression of love, and I also live in a body that happens to have cystic fibrosis. So, this movie, 5 Feet Apart, it touches home and a tender space in me for a number of places, or for a number of reasons. Sorry. Um, One is because I have lived my own uh, 5 feet apart reality in some ways. And yes, a part of that is because I have cystic fibrosis. And a part of that is because I've spent a good portion of my life in and out of hospitals. And a part of that is because I've had other friends who had cystic fibrosis who have passed away. And I have friends who are still living with cystic fibrosis. um, where we have to be careful around how we can be with each other. Part of that is because I now live in a reality where, in the world and community of cystic fibrosis, because of infection control and cross contamination risks, there are people and parents and families and children and adults who are afraid to interact with each other and who are, there's good reason for that in a lot of ways. um, but I also think there's so much value in being able to know, love, and talk with, be with people who have gone through and are going through something similar. So for all of those reasons, I could relate to this movie. But one really big reason is because when I was probably about 14ish, there was a young man who came into my life, and his name was Peter Lawn. I resisted getting to know him at first because I had just lost someone who I adored, um, a little boy who had cystic fibrosis. I was also a little girl at the time. We were just about 1 year apart. His name was Jeff Moore. And I was very close to him. He was very special to me, and he passed away when he was about 13 and I was about 12. So Peter came into my life very shortly after Jeff had passed. And like I said, I resisted getting to know him at first, um, in big part because I had a lot of pain in my heart around the loss of Jeff and didn't want to go through that again. Um, However, um, Peter was very persuasive and charming, and he definitely won his way into my heart as well. Um, we became very close and had, crushes on each other, fell in love in the way that you can when you're, 14 years old. Um, and it was discovered shortly after that that he had Apica, and this was at a time where infection control was just becoming a thing. So before this time, infection control wasn't a thing in the CF community. Kids went to camp together. We roomed together in the hospital. There was a much more physical, sort of in-person encouragement around the way we could support each other and be with each other. So as I was coming into a teen, the infection control really is started to be initiated, started to be enforced, and especially infection control between patients who had Apica and patients who did not. And unfortunately, or fortunately, um, unfortunately for my relationship with Peter at the time, um, we 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 needed to be um, separated. So what that meant at first was that if we were to see each other at all, he needed to have gloves, have a mask, and we needed to have some distance between each other. And as you can imagine, as a teen, um, that felt like a whole world apart. Um, but we still stayed in touch as much as we could, and saw each other from a distance. And still, then as we got older and outside of the hospital, we saw each other while we were in the hospital. We escaped the hospital and went to the park together at certain points. I mean, we still did see each other. We still did have a relationship. I think I had some guilt of my own for kind of also wanting to like honor and protect my body and to stay healthy in a way, um, a- and to not catch B apiacepacia, what Peter had at that point, but also like loved him, and it not only like as a crush, but loved him intimately because of some of the depth of what we shared, through cystic fibrosis, through knowing each other in that way. So I still, wanted to have that relationship, wanted to be able to be in contact with him and show him that I, loved and cared for him, while still trying to also care for myself. So that was a really tricky thing for me to navigate in that way. But I know that also it was for him on his end. Um, so it was devastating to us in a way, that we needed to have those levels of separation because of um, being afraid of the bacteria and the disease that lived within us. But like I said, we did remain contact. There were points where he did visit me outside of the hospital. I did go visit him outside of the hospital, and then um, I think it was just really confusing and hard for us. So there was a point where we, made a conscious decision to not see each other as much, and um, that just it got hard, um, and complicated. So there was a time period where I did not see Peter, um, but then um, we sort of refound our way back to each other. Um, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be brief, but I'm also trying to share about this piece in a way that does it justice. Um, so there was some separation, and to kind of speed things up a bit, what eventually ended up happening is Peter did get back in contact with me, and we communicated via phone because we could do that, and that was safe. Um, you know, after graduating high school and going into college, and there was a point when Peter got really sick. He did require he needed a lung transplant, but there were many places that would not transplant him because he had B apiacepacia. But finally, there was one doctor who would take that risk and who did, and he was able to get new lungs. It was a hospital in Pittsburgh that did this for him and with him. And at first, he was doing really well. He was so excited he could play basketball again. And I loved hearing and feeling that joy in him and through him when I, heard him on the phone, heard about how he was able to, run and play on the court a bit again. And so that lasted for a little bit. But then Peter did go into rejection, at which point it came to a point where uh, the doctors were pretty sure that he was going to die. And his mother reached out to me, and I had a talk with my doctors, and I, um, I asked them about the risks if I were to go and see him at that point, both for him and for me. Um, I was told at that point that the risks for him were very little just because of where he was already at, in terms of his illness. For me, at that point, there definitely were more. His Bisapatia was in his system still at that time, but after having the conversation with my doctor, and he was actually really wonderful at that point. He was very straight with me about the risks and also what I could do to protect myself if I did choose to go, and said, that the choice is mine. And um, so I could, I if I did see him, I was advised to glove and gown and mask and change the masks frequently, and of course use good respiratory hygiene there, wash, scrub, all the everything I could do. Um, and so after I was educated and informed about the risks, and talked with Peter's parents, um, his mom talked to Pete, and I made the decision to go down and be with him. And I have to say that uh, I would not have traded that time with him for anything. I mean, it was one of the most precious times I've had in my life, to be able to just be with my friend, um, in person, and to be able to hold his hand through gloves. And to just, be able to look him in the eye and be close enough in him to him to say, I love you and you're important to me and I'm right here. And, to be able to ask him the questions that just was so important to do in person. Ask him if he was afraid, ask him what he needed. I should know on his behalf that he said no, he was not afraid. He was Superman, and he wasn't going anywhere. Um, and I'll fast forward just a little bit in the story to tell you that against all odds, he did rebound. He did come back. He was able to actually live uh, at least a year past that. And so back to the point in the hospital, I will just say that you know I did not get Bisapatia. I've been cultured many times for it after that. Um, so I'm fortunate in that respect. Um, that said, it could have happened. But to me, at that point in my life, being able to be with my friend, was worth it at that point. Um, of course, with taking all the precautions necessary to try and make sure that it didn't happen. That is not a choice that I think is the right choice, or a choice that everybody would make. And of course, it's absolutely up to the individual, but it's just the choice that I made then. And I have absolutely no regrets about it, at this point in my life, and can't say that I ever would. Um, so I'm just incredibly grateful for that time. But um, Peter did eventually, he did pass away, again, due to complications with resistance. Um, and I know I'm doing this video totally imperfectly, um, but it just felt really important for me to share, and I haven't found the perfect way to do it. Um, and I just wanted to share that the heartache that can happen around infection control, and um, the loss that can happen there is very real. And yes, in the movie, these are three characters, and they're just characters. They're not real people. But this does happen with real people, and this is real life for some people. And there are loves that can't be expressed and can't be touched and can't be reached without incredible risk. So, if you do choose to see the movie, when you do choose to see this movie, and it is a good movie, I'd recommend seeing it. Um, just know that this is reality for some of us. Um, Obviously, not the movie, but what's happening in it is a slice of reality for some of us. So keep that in your mind, keep that in your heart as you see the movie, and um, certainly if you have questions after the movie, reach out and ask somebody. I'm open to questions at any point in time. If it's something that I can't answer, I certainly, I won't. Um, but I think, this movie is an opportunity for people to see a slice of what it's like to have CF. So, um, so yeah, see it. And yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing this imperfectly, but it felt important to, yeah, to show up and to express in honor of the number of us that this is a reality for, and in honor of Pete and Jeff and all the loves who are out there who have cystic fibrosis and are separated through infection control. So, if you've watched this to the end, thank you for watching. And if you see the movie and you have questions, feel free to reach out. I do think it would be good also to do a video more specific to the movie and some of what was portrayed in there. So if you're interested in seeing that too, go ahead and put that in the comments, and that will encourage me to actually move forward with making the video. So thanks again for watching, and 5 feet apart. I think it's worth seeing. Thanks.